The first sound was silence. Not the gentle quiet of deep space, but a suffocating, expectant silence that pressed against the hull of the Vigilant Edge like a storm yet to break. Commander Celine Dre stood alone on the ship's obsidian black observation deck, her breath shallow as she stared into the void beyond the reinforced quantum glass. Her gloved hands tightened around the rail. There, just beyond the fragmented ice fields of the Kuiper Belt, something impossible was moving. Symmetry, intent, rhythm. She watched as the dark silhouettes spun, 5 immense angular structures, orbiting one another with mathematical precision, like monolithic petals of a machine-born flower. They shifted in and out of phase with space itself, blinking in and out of conventional visibility. They weren't broadcasting signals in any frequency humanity could decode, but their presence was a message in itself. Something that vast, that deliberate, did not drift through the black for no reason. It was March 17th, 2289. And the universe had just answered a question humanity had asked for thousands of years. The onboard AI, Hades 7, broke the silence with a voice as calm as a surgeon's breath. Unidentified structures detected. Probability of extraterrestrial origin, 99.8%. Initiating first contact protocols. Celine barely nodded, but her thoughts screamed. All her training, simulations, and psychological evaluations had prepared her for this moment, at least in theory. But theory was ashes when the impossible was staring back. Across the inner planets, humanity watched in stunned paralysis. Earth, Mars, the Jovian moons. Entire networks lit up as the first high-res transmission from Vigilant Edge reached civilization. Billions of people held their breath as the image unfolded across every screen. 5 alien constructs turning silently at the edge of the solar system, like sentinels waiting for a signal. In the United Nations of Sol's Grand Assembly Hall, chaos erupted. Political alliances strained under the weight of ancient fears and fresh paranoia. Was it a reconnaissance fleet? A probe? A harbinger of invasion? Conspiracy theorists flooded the data stream with cries of vindication. Religious leaders declared the day sacred. Billionaires launched private escape shuttles toward off-grid habitats. The human race, for all its technological advancements, still wrestled with the same primal reaction, fear of the unknown. And yet, some were mesmerized. Scientists wept. Historians trembled. Philosophers dared to hope. What if it wasn't war? What if it was contact? A cosmic handshake across the stars. But then came the pulse. From within the central structure, larger than a planetary moon and seemingly hollow, a pulse of light flared in 19 simultaneous directions. Beams of shimmering photonic energy shot outward, not as weapons but as scanners. The Vigilant Edge's systems shuddered. Internal gravity hiccuped. One by one, auxiliary systems flickered. Not damaged, just silenced. Then a second pulse, deeper, slower, measured. Hades 7's voice sharpened. External anomaly interacting with ship's neural cortex, attempting containment. Celine felt it. Something foreign brushing against her thoughts like fingers, tapping on the glass of her skull. For a second, she couldn't breathe. The alien structure wasn't just scanning their ship, it was scanning them. Crew psychometric profiles accessed, Hades warned. It knows we are conscious. A hollow thrum reverberated through the ship's hull as the central construct began to unfold. Panels shifted like puzzle pieces, rotating, in impossible geometries, revealing a core of pulsing sapphire light. And then, over every channel, military, civilian, encrypted, a voice arrived. Ancient, synthetic, and utterly alien. You are observed. You are catalogued. You are not the first. In that moment, Celine wasn't just afraid. She was small. Not because of the scale of the thing before her, but because of what the message implied. You are not the first. Back on Earth, pandemonium. Global defense systems jumped to DEFCON Cosmic, an emergency designation buried in the deepest strata of military protocols. 77 Dreadnought-class warships powered up their antimatter cores. Orbital railgun platforms locked trajectories. Every planetary defense AI waited for one command: engage, or stand down. But this wasn't a fleet. No weapons were visible, no shields, no signs of hostility. Just a language of light and motion that grew more elaborate by the second, as if it was trying to teach. Celine leaned forward, ignoring the tremble in her limbs. She whispered, "What are you?" Hades replied before the alien voice did. Data stream translation underway. Primary intent. Warning. The second message, when it came, chilled the system's spine. Do not fear what watches you. Fear what we fear. It is coming. The observation deck lights dimmed. Somewhere in the deep folds of her mind, Celine felt it. A presence. Older than any sun, moving like a thought through time. And that was the moment humanity's arrogance died. Because in the span of 5 minutes, the universe had delivered 3 truths. We are not alone. We were never first. And something else is coming. The aftermath of that pulse left humanity teetering on the edge of a precipice. The terror that gripped Earth was not born solely of the unknown alien presence, but of the cryptic message it had left behind. Do not fear what watches you. Fear what we fear. It is coming. Those words, seared into every human mind, could not be erased. No leader could promise safety, no scientist could explain what it meant. The whole of Earth's collective civilization had been shattered, not by the discovery of extraterrestrial life, but by the realization that something far worse, something that made the alien structures seem like mere messengers, was on its way. Celine Drey had seen many things in her years as a commander, but nothing in her extensive training could have prepared her for the reality of this moment. Standing on the vigilant edge, she stared out at the alien formation, her mind a whirlwind of questions. She wasn't afraid of the beings who had reached out to them, not yet. What troubled her was the terrifying implication of the message. What were they afraid of? And why was it coming for them? Commander, Hades 7's voice sliced through her thoughts. We are receiving a secondary signal from the alien vessel. It is directed specifically at your command. They are requesting a one-on-one communication. Celine's heart skipped a beat. The entire Sol system was watching the transmission. With the stakes as high as they were, there was no room for missteps. She steeled herself, knowing that the moment she agreed to this communication, humanity's fate might well be sealed. What are they offering? She asked, her voice steady despite the tension wrapping around her chest. Not an offer, Commander, Hades 7 replied. An ultimatum, a call to prepare, and a warning. The silence in the room was palpable as Celine mulled over the implications. To speak to them, alone, would be to invite whatever chaos the alien forces harbored directly into her mind. Yet refusing them could be worse. It was an excruciating choice that would impact every human being across the galaxy. Transmit the request, she ordered. She turned to face the view screen, her breath quiet as she tried to steady her nerves. The alien formation still loomed, just beyond the event horizon of the outer planets, a ghostly reminder of how much humanity still didn't know about the universe. Within moments, a new pattern formed in the stars. The alien light coalesced into an intricate fractal design, a signal that humans would struggle to understand, but which Hades 7 quickly decoded as an invitation. This wasn't just a message, it was a complex negotiation, layered with meaning. Hades 7's translation algorithm revealed an unsettling truth. The alien race, or races, didn't seem to communicate through spoken language at all. Instead, they used light, energy patterns, and shifts in gravitational pull to convey their thoughts. This was not just an advanced form of communication. It was a level of technology that made humanity's most sophisticated AIs look like children's toys. The aliens were so far beyond them they might as well have been gods. The idea of communication felt absurd, like trying to explain human consciousness to an ant. And yet, they wanted to talk. Celine's hand hovered over the console. The message was clear, despite the complexity. The beings had been watching humanity for far longer than any of them could have imagined. They had studied every aspect of human history, analyzed our wars, our technologies, our rise and fall, and they had drawn conclusions. But in their silence there was something almost benevolent, as if they were offering humanity a chance, albeit one fraught with danger. The choice was even more terrifying than the unknown. Could humanity stand in the face of something so vast, so incomprehensible, and ask for help? Or was it a ploy, a trap? Before Celine could give the order, her crew, the best of humanity's military and scientific minds, began to voice their concerns. Lieutenant Arlen, a brilliant but brash strategist, was the first to speak out. We can't just blindly communicate with them. We don't know what they want, or if they'll even honor any kind of agreement. We're not ready. This is a mistake. I agree, said Dr. Leora Valen, the ship's lead xenobiologist. We know nothing about them. What if they're not benevolent? What if their fear is a sign that they know something we don't? Celine stood silent, the weight of their words pressing on her. They were right, but she couldn't help but feel that refusing the communication would be the greater risk. The aliens had already shown their power. These were not beings that could be fought, at least not with anything humanity currently possessed. The stakes were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. There was no playbook for a situation like this. Would Earth's military-industrial complex, its vast fleet of warships, drones, and satellite networks, be enough if the alien fear was truly justified? Could humanity find allies in the stars, or were they alone against an impending catastrophe? The captain's voice cut through the murmurs. Commander, we have only one option: communicate. Celine nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the dark structures beyond the viewport. She could feel the presence of something watching them, something older than the Earth itself, and with that knowledge came the terrible weight of responsibility. The fate of billions rested on the decision to trust these beings, who, despite their incomprehensible form, had shown no intention of harm. I agree, she said finally, her voice resolute. Prepare the communication channel. The alien response came almost immediately, too fast for them to have expected it. The screen flickered, and then a flood of energy surged forward, illuminating the command room in a dazzling kaleidoscope of shifting colors. The pattern formed again, a language of light and shifting gravitational waves. For a moment, it was so intense that Celine's vision blurred. Her mind raced to interpret the symbols, but it was like trying to understand a symphony of chaos. Then, in a voice that vibrated across the very core of her being, the message came through. It was not in words, but in sensations, a pulse of emotion, a deep, undeniable resonance that made her heart beat faster. The alien being was showing her something. Images flickered in her mind, images of stars dying, of black voids swallowing, entire civilizations, of immense structures built on the edge of galaxies, and of something moving in the distance, dark, unknowable, and powerful. We fear the dark star, the voice said, its tone heavy with a sorrow that Celine could feel in her bones. It comes. The screen flickered once more, and then it was gone. The message had ended, and the ship was left in stunned silence. The dark star, an ancient entity that even the aliens feared. It wasn't just a message, it was a warning. In the silence that followed the alien transmission, the crew of the Vigilant Edge was left to process the enormity of what had just transpired. The dark core of the message reverberated through Celine's mind. The dark star. It wasn't a simple warning. It was a revelation that could shatter humanity's understanding of the universe itself. Something had been watching the galaxy for millennia, something powerful enough to instill terror in beings capable of bending the very fabric of space-time. But the fear in the alien's voice wasn't just about the dark star. It was about the inevitability of its arrival. The aliens had spoken of it as though its coming was a matter of time, something beyond even their control. The transmission had ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving behind only a haunting emptiness that settled deep in Celine's chest. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just a spectator in the cosmic arena anymore. It was part of a larger, far more dangerous game. The decision to remain in orbit around the alien structure was now inescapable. The Vigilant Edge was humanity's first and only contact point with this vast, unfathomable intelligence. But what now? What had they learned? Was this alien species truly offering an alliance, or were they simply trying to prepare humanity for the coming storm? And most importantly, why had they been silent for so long before deciding to make contact? Celine paced the command deck, her mind a blur of calculations and possibilities. The dark shapes of the alien vessels loomed on the view screen, shifting and pulsing with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. The light that emanated from them wasn't just bright, it was alive. Each beam of energy seemed to breathe, ebbing and flowing with a living, organic quality. It was as if the ships themselves were sentient, not merely tools of war or transportation. They were something more, something alive, like a vast and ancient consciousness that had chosen to reach out. "Commander, we're receiving further transmissions from the alien fleet." Hades 7's voice echoed through the ship's command center. This time, the message is directed to all of humanity. They wish to speak of the Dark Star and the role you must play. Celine took a slow breath, every fiber of her being screaming to avoid the deeper complexities of the situation. The weight of her decision pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. She wasn't just the captain of a vessel anymore. She was the voice of humanity's first real encounter with the unknown. How would Earth respond? How would she respond? No one had prepared for this. No simulation, no training. Nothing in her career as an officer could have simulated the gravity of what she was about to face. "Transmit the message," she ordered, her voice barely a whisper against the hum of the ship's systems. The screen in front of her rippled to life once again, this time showing an intricate lattice of energy patterns, geometries that defied both logic and imagination. They twisted and folded into themselves, shapes that were impossible to describe, yet undeniably precise. Then, as if from nowhere, a voice emerged, not one, but a chorus of tones, layered and deep, like a symphony of sounds resonating from the very fabric of the universe itself. "We are the Verlek, the Watchers. We have seen many civilizations rise and fall. You are young, but you are not without purpose. The Dark Star is no myth, no celestial anomaly. It is a force beyond comprehension. Its arrival is inevitable. It devours everything in its path, and it is coming." The alien words were punctuated by a subtle, pulsing hum. Celine felt the sound vibrate in her bones, as if it resonated with the very core of her being. The Verlek. The name alone sent chills down her spine. Were these the beings who had been watching humanity for so long? Were they gods, or something else entirely? "The Dark Star is a consuming entity," the voice continued. "It has existed for eons, consuming all it touches. Its hunger is not of flesh, but of existence itself. Entire galaxies have been swallowed by it, their stars extinguished, their worlds reduced to void. We, the Verlek, have lived in the shadow of the Dark Star for millennia. We are the last remnants of a once great civilization, scattered and divided, forever running from its pull." The alien transmission paused, and for a moment, all that could be heard was the hum of the Vigilant Edge's engines. The crew stood frozen, absorbing the weight of the words they had just heard. A consuming entity, an intelligence so vast and horrifying that entire galaxies had fallen before it. The implications were staggering. Earth had always been aware of the threats that existed beyond their own solar system. Rogue asteroids, supernovae, gravitational anomalies. But this was something else entirely. Something that defied everything they had ever known about the universe. "Why are you telling us this?" Celine asked, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "What role do we play in this cosmic destruction?" The Verlek responded with a sound like 1,000 distant winds. It was not a direct answer, but a transmission of something far deeper, something more visceral. A vision flickered in her mind, brief, fragmented glimpses of shattered worlds, star systems falling into disarray. The image of an enormous, dark star, black as the void between the stars, devouring everything in its path. And then the darkness shifted, revealing something else. The image blurred and became clearer. Massive structures, far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. Ships so vast they seemed to warp the fabric of space itself. Endless armies, not of flesh and blood, but of light and metal, poised at the edge of a galactic battlefield. The Dark Star consumes not only stars, but civilizations. It feeds on the light of knowledge, the fire of progress. All that you hold dear will be reduced to dust unless you understand this truth, the Verlek voice intoned. You will need us, and you will need to prepare. And then, as suddenly as the transmission had begun, it ceased. The screen went dark. Selene stood motionless, her thoughts swirling like a maelstrom. What did the Verlek mean? Prepare? For what? The vision they had shared was too much to process all at once. Too many questions, too many unknowns. But there was one thing she knew for certain. Humanity's fight had just begun, and the alien beings who had watched them from the shadows weren't here to offer refuge. They were here to make sure humanity survived the end. "Commander," Lieutenant Arlen spoke up, his voice tight with disbelief. "Do you think they're telling the truth? Could something like that really exist?" Selene turned to face him, her eyes hardening with resolve. "We've seen the evidence, Lieutenant. The message, the technology, the vision, it's all too real. And if we don't listen, we might not survive long enough to even find out what happens next." She felt a coldness seep into her bones, a coldness born of the knowledge that the greatest challenge humanity would ever face had already begun, and no one knew if they would be strong enough to meet it. The days that followed the transmission were a blur of activity, but the weight of what Selene had seen and heard never left her. Every creak of the vigilant edge, every hum of its engines, felt like a countdown to an unknown fate. The warning of the Verlek had ignited something deep within humanity, a mixture of terror, determination, and confusion. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing had become abundantly clear. Earth had no choice but to act. The dark star was coming, and every moment of hesitation brought humanity closer to annihilation. The vigilant edge was soon joined by a coalition of ships from across the solar system. Earth's best and brightest, military forces, scientists, and strategists all united under one cause. The fleet was hastily assembled, the urgency palpable in every interaction. Nations put aside their differences, their borders meaningless in the face of the cosmic terror that threatened to consume them all. But even with all the resources and knowledge that Earth could muster, they were no match for the unknown. Selene paced the command center once more. A map of the galaxy sprawled out in front of her. Every dot represented something important, a star system, a research station, a planetary defense outpost. But the most critical one was the last. It was a dot deep in the outer rim, where no human had ever ventured. The Verlek had mentioned it in passing, a dark region where the gravitational pull was so strong that it distorted the very fabric of space-time. It was from this dark place that the dark star would emerge. "Commander, we've analyzed the data," Dr. Leora Valen's voice broke through her thoughts. "This is unlike anything we've seen before. The dark star is not just a star, it's a singularity, a massive black hole, but one with a mind, if you can call it that. Its gravitational field distorts the local space-time so drastically that nothing, not even light, can escape. The Verlek are right. If it reaches us..." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. There was no escaping it. Once the dark star began to approach, it would warp reality itself, swallowing everything in its path. And yet, they had no idea how to stop it. "Do you think the Verlek can help us?" Selena asked, her voice more strained than she intended. Dr. Valen hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the view screen, where the alien ships continued to hover, silent and enigmatic. "I don't know. Their technology is beyond anything we can even begin to comprehend. But they've made it clear. They are not our saviors. They are survivors. They've watched entire civilizations fall to the dark star. All they've offered is a warning and a vague promise of aid. But that's not the same as salvation." The truth of her words stung like a slap. The Verlek were not here to help humanity. They were here because they too were running out of time. They too feared the dark star. Humanity was just another speck in the vastness of a universe filled with dying stars. "You should speak with them, Commander," Hades 7 interjected, its voice calm but insistent. "Their knowledge could be crucial." Selene nodded, though the idea of depending on the Verlek for anything, let alone their survival, left a bitter taste in her mouth. She didn't trust them, not entirely. But in this moment, with the looming shadow of the dark star threatening to eclipse everything, She had no choice but to take a risk. The communication channel was opened once again, and this time, it was not just a transmission of light and sound. The Verlek were reaching out with their minds, sending a message directly into Celine's consciousness. It was disorienting at first, like the sensation of hearing 1,000 voices at once. But there was no time to be unsettled. The images were strange, but not hostile. They were visions of a galaxy ravaged by the dark star's influence. Entire systems had been stripped bare, their stars extinguished in the wake of its relentless advance. The Verlek spoke of their ancient ancestors, a race that had once ruled over a vast empire, an empire now reduced to fractured remnants scattered. Across the stars, the dark star had claimed their homeworld, leaving only a few survivors to carry on a legacy of knowledge and fear. "We have learned much in our eons of survival," the voice of the Verlek said, echoing through Celine's mind. "We can teach you to survive, but you must be willing to sacrifice. The dark star is not merely a threat. It is a cosmic inevitability. There is no victory, only survival." Celine gripped the edge of her seat, her mind racing as the alien visions continued to flood her senses. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling before her eyes. The Verlek spoke of weapons, devices capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe, but at a cost. Their technology was not something that could be used lightly. To wield it required understanding not just of physics, but of the very nature of existence itself. "We will give you the knowledge to fight back," the Verlek continued. "But be warned, the cost of using this power is greater than you can imagine. It is not simply a weapon. It is a force that can alter the fabric of reality. Once you invoke it, you can never undo what has been done." The implication was clear. Humanity had the potential to stop the dark star, but it came with a terrible price. To use the Verlek's technology would be to gamble with the very essence of life and death. The stakes were far higher than mere survival. The question was no longer about whether humanity could defeat the dark star. It was about whether they could endure the consequences of trying. The transmission ended, leaving Celine alone with her thoughts. She felt a cold weight settle over her heart as she processed the magnitude of the decision that lay before her. The knowledge offered by the Verlek could be their salvation, or it could lead them down a path from which there was no return. "Commander," Arlen's voice came through the comms, his tone urgent. "We've detected an anomaly. Something's happening at the edge of the system. The gravitational shifts are increasing." Celine's breath caught in her throat as she turned to the view screen. The stars themselves seemed to warp and stretch, their light bending and twisting like smoke in a flame. The dark star was drawing near, and with it the entire system seemed to be collapsing into itself. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Celine ordered, her voice hard with resolve. "We don't have time. We have to make our move, now." The fleet moved in unison, engines roaring to life as they adjusted their positions, desperately trying to escape the gravitational pull of the approaching singularity. But no maneuver could outrun the inevitable. The dark star's influence was too strong, its presence too vast. Humanity's last hope was not in fleeing, but in using the very technology the Verlek had promised. But at what cost? The vigilant edge surged forward into the heart of the storm, its engines pushing beyond their limits as the gravitational pull of the approaching dark star intensified. Every maneuver felt like an act of defiance against the crushing inevitability of the universe itself. Yet Celine knew there was no escape. Not for them, not for humanity. The fleet was locked in a desperate race, not away from the darkness, but toward it, toward the very edge of existence. As they neared the edge of the system, the distortion in space became even more pronounced. The stars around them seemed to melt and stretch, their light bending and warping, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart by the approaching singularity. It was unlike anything Celine had ever witnessed, beyond the comprehension of any human. It felt as if the universe itself were gasping for breath. "Commander, we're at the threshold." Hades 7's calm voice rang through the command center, though even it carried a subtle note of tension. "The gravitational field is too strong. We're at the mercy of the dark star's pull." The crew's faces were etched with the same sense of dread that gnawed at Celine's own heart. They had come so far, yet all of it felt like a futile, attempt to escape the inevitable. The Verlek had warned them, told them there was no victory, only survival. And as the darkened horizon before them grew larger, the realization of that truth became undeniable. But there was one last hope. The technology offered by the Verlek, the device capable of bending the laws of physics itself. It was their only chance. Celine could see the faint glimmer of it now, deep within the core of the ship, in the heart of the black box they had been instructed to activate. The weight of it was unbearable, not just in the literal sense, but in the gravity of the decision. To use it was to take a step into the unknown, a plunge into the darkness where the consequences were as vast as the cosmos itself. The question was no longer whether they could survive the Dark Star's arrival. It was whether they could endure the cost of defying it. Celine's mind raced as she looked out at the view screen. The alien fleet had moved into position alongside them, their massive ships like ghostly sentinels, unmoving, awaiting the next phase. The Verlek had not offered any more guidance. They had given humanity the knowledge, the key to the power they needed. Now it was up to them to decide what to do with it. "We're ready, Commander," Dr. Valen said, her voice tight with a mixture of excitement and fear. "The device is primed. We can initiate the field at any moment. But remember what the Verlek said. The consequences will be catastrophic. We don't know what this will do to our reality, to the fabric of space itself." Celine nodded grimly. She had been trained for many things, but this was beyond any simulation. The Verlek had warned them that using the device would not simply stop the Dark Star, it would change the very nature of the universe around them. Time, space, existence, none of it would remain the same, and once the device was activated, there would be no turning back. "This is the only way," she said, her voice firm, cutting through the tension that hung in the air. "If we don't act now, the Dark Star will consume us all. We make our stand here." With a trembling hand, Celine activated the device. The ship shuddered as the immense energy of the technology coursed through its systems. The air seemed to hum with power as an ethereal, shimmering field enveloped the vigilant edge. The very stars outside seemed to bend and flicker, their light fading as the field took hold, distorting the space around them. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the Dark Star appeared. It was not a singularity in the way they had expected. It wasn't simply a void in space. The Dark Star was alive. Its immense form stretched across the fabric of the cosmos like a malignant force, a vast and insatiable entity. It radiated a darkness so profound that it felt like the very concept of light and matter was being undone. Stars and planets that lay in its wake seemed to vanish, as though they had never existed at all. A vast, undulating surface, like a black ocean, pulled everything toward it, devouring everything in its path with a cold, unstoppable hunger. The field created by the Verlek technology shimmered around the fleet, but Celine could feel it slipping. The pull of the Dark Star was growing stronger. No matter how much they fought, they were being drawn toward it, inch by inch. "Activate the secondary defense systems," Celine shouted, her voice a sharp command as she clenched her fists. "We cannot allow this to overwhelm us. Hold the line." The ship's systems whined in protest, their energy being drained by the Dark Star's massive gravitational field. For a brief moment, it felt as though the vigilant edge might collapse under the strain, its hull groaning in protest. But then, something shifted. The device activated fully, and with it, the unimaginable force of the Verlek technology began to push back against the Dark Star's pull. The fleet was suddenly thrust forward, as if reality itself had been stretched like an elastic band, and then released. Time and space twisted around them, disorienting and surreal, as though they were traveling through the very fabric of existence. The stars flickered and danced, their light bending in unnatural ways. The gravitational force of the Dark Star wavered as the device interfered with its reach, destabilizing its gravitational grip. For a moment, it seemed like they might succeed. But then, the universe rebelled. A pulse, violent, all-consuming, ripped through the fabric of space, tearing at the core of their reality. The black hole at the center of the Dark Star expanded, its influence flooding outward like an unstoppable tide. The vigilant edge shuddered as the hull cracked under the strain. The secondary system sputtered and failed. Celine could hear the screams of her crew as they fought against the pull of the singularity. And then, with a deafening sound, the universe itself seemed to break. Reality bent, twisted, and collapsed into nothingness. For an instant, everything went dark. When Celine opened her eyes again, she was not sure what she was seeing. The stars had returned, but they were not the stars she knew. The universe around them had changed, distorted beyond recognition. The fleet was scattered, the remnants of ships floating in a void that felt different. It was not the same universe they had once inhabited. The laws of time and space had been rewritten, altered by the technology they had invoked. But they had survived. As the crew of the Vigilant Edge slowly regrouped, Celine stood before them. The weight of her decisions, heavy on her shoulders. They had defied the Dark Star. But at what cost? The universe had been altered irrevocably. Humanity had survived. But the future was now a vast unknown. And somewhere, in the depths of the cosmos, the Dark Star still lingered, its hunger unsatisfied, its shadow waiting to return. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this tale, like and share it with your friends. What do you think humanity's true future will look like after this? Comment below with your thoughts and theories, Domini.